Hello, welcome back to Behind the Faders, the live sound channel. Today we're going to talk about bass guitar. This was actually requested by one of my subscribers. So I'm going to tell you everything I can think of about handling bass guitar. So first, how do we pick it up? Well, the easiest way is actually you plug the instrument into a DI box and you're done. And that happens sometimes. Although I have a feeling that if that does happen, it's usually like some kind of a paid gig that the bass player does not really care about too much. So his biggest goal was to keep the effort as little as possible. So he just brings his instrument. But it works. How do I handle the signal? Well, I will give it a low cut unless I'm working with a reggae band, because the reggae is the only genre I know or can think of where the bass guitar is supposed to live underneath the kick drum. So that aside, low cut, and then I usually look around 120 hertz for some warmth and fullness, if you will. And then if I want a kind of growling bass, some kind of rock bass, I look around 700 hertz. And these are usually the only two movements that I make. I hardly find problems in a bass guitar that I have to reduce or carve out. But if I hear a problem, I will, of course, carve it out. If I have a funk bass, I might look for an area to kind of reinforce the slapping a bit, about 2K or 2.5K, something like that. And just to get this out of the way, if I have a DI and a microphone channel, I will do all these EQ moves on the microphone channel, because I usually then use the I channel for kind of the low end and the very high end, and everything in the middle I will do to the microphone channel, because I expected to have a little bit more character and texture. I mean, it's a case-by-case decision, but this is usually how I will handle that. And I put a compressor on it, on the channel or the channels, even if the bass player is compressing his signal before with a pedal or something. I just do it. Pretty aggressive even, 6-to-1 usually, and with a moderate attack and release time. So now, the other question was Ampsim versus real amp. That's not easy to answer, really. I mean, first of all, Ampsim have come a long way. I mean, I'm a guitar player myself, and for the longest time, I rejected any kind of artificial amplifier, always claiming that they're still not good enough to match a real valve amp. And for a long time, that was true. But of course, nowadays, there's no argument against it. I mean, even bands like Metallica are using Ampsims now instead of real amps. So there's pros and cons to both. So first of all, Ampsim are really convenient. I mean, most of them even have a DI out, so you plug in a cable and you're done. Well, having said that, many amplifiers have a DI out as well, so you don't need a microphone for the Ampsim that has spill, and you spare a mic stand that can be tipped over by somebody. So that's the pros. The con, however, is the sound that you're getting is entirely dependent on how good the guy is on dialing it in. And it's a bit like my point about digital desks. If the guy gets carried away by the options of this Ampsim, he might dial in a sound that's not even usable. In fact, if you meet a bass player and you don't really trust him, you don't know the guy, you could take a DI signal from the instrument directly before the Ampsim. The problem with that is that the bass player will probably not accept it and ask you why you need an extra DI signal while he's delivering this great sound through his Ampsim. So you need to come up with some good excuses, like maybe you say, I'm so used to DI and mic, so I will take the Ampsim for a mic channel, but I still want the DI. I'm just used to do it like that. Or you could claim that in a recent show, the Ampsim died in the middle of a show and you want some kind of backup in case that happens again. If he still doesn't accept it, then it is what it is. So, amplifier. Well, now, if you have a full rig now, the biggest difference, of course, is now you have noise. There's a cabinet that emits the bass on stage. The question here is, should you still use a microphone for this cabinet even though you're just in a small room and the bass is even too loud all by itself? I say yes, and here's why. If the bass is too loud in the room and you have two channels, you can get 4 different starting points altogether. First of all, what you should do, and you should do this anyway because it's beneficial for the entire mix, you should delay the PA to the back line. So if the stage is 3 meters deep, you should now delay your PA by 3 meters, just using delay function on your master bus. Now what you can do is with these two bass channels, you can flip the polarity of either the DI channel or the mic channel or both or none. That gives you four completely different options, and one of these options might, it's no guarantee, but might even make the bass quieter in the room. But now I can hear a lot of you arguing this can't work, the phase relationship between the two and the PA, and you mess it all up. I mean, I know the theory behind it. I know all the physics behind it. Fact is, especially low frequency are a mess anyway. Even if you just have the bass amp by itself, like a point source, as soon as reflections come in, you got a mess. You put it on the PA, even the PA is delayed to the backline. Now you have three sources, you have a mess. You have a mess anyway. But this is a bit maybe the point of this channel, that I'm not so much about theory and the science behind it, even though I know it. It's more about mixing in the real world. So I once had a problem. I had these two channels. I had the idea of trying the polarity switches, and it just happened to work. And it works not every time, but it works many times. So check it out for yourself. But a bass being too loud, even way too loud, is not necessarily always a problem. Let me tell you a story about this. Many years ago, I was asked to jump in on a tour of a band called Carl Carlton Song Dogs, because this band had fired their front of house engineer for whatever reason. I don't know. So Carl Carlton is a famous guitar player in Germany and Europe. I'm not sure about his relevance worldwide, but I know that he worked with Robert Palmer, for example. So I'm sure he's got some relevance even outside of Europe. And three of the members of this band were members of Mother's Finest. So if you're only young, you might not even know Mother's Finest, but they used to be a really big funk rock band back in the 70s and 80s. So one of those members was their famous bass player, Wizard. Luckily for me, in between that show where they fired their front of house engineer and the first show that I was supposed to come in, they had booked himself into a kind of rehearsal space to, I don't know, implement some new songs into the set or whatever it was. And the setup was located in the warehouse of a big PA company that also had a studio. So the band would be in like the recording room of the studio. And I had a little setup outside of that room with my desk and a little PA for monitoring. It's a really cool, convenient setup for a rehearsal. But what I never did the entire day where they rehearsed, I never walked into this room to listen to them playing, because I was busy with getting my mix together outside of their room. Especially because they didn't even kind of sound check for me. They just rehearsed and I was grabbing my signals together. But easy enough because I had an entire day. But I never walked into there. So the next day, first show, and we were playing small to mid-sized clubs, because since the members were kind of famous in their other bands, in this formation they were not very well known, not very famous. It was a small tour. So we are setting up, and now the backline technician switches on Wizard's bass amp and starts checking it. And I'm like, oh man, really? So I walk up to the backline technician and ask him if he could turn it down, or if I could maybe ask Wizard later on to turn it down. And he said, sure, go ahead. If you want him to hate you from the first second, ask him to turn down. And I thought, like, well, I got it. So now the band comes in and they start sound checking. We used local monitor engineers on that tour. There was no budget for their own monitor engineer. So while they're checking their monitors, I have a chance to refine my signals, but I'm thinking about this loud bass guitar the entire time and what to do about it. Because this time around, the polarity flip thing did not work. I admit it. And now they start playing their first song, and I was blown away. This guy played with so much precision, so groovy, with so much feeling, that it was absolutely no problem at all. Yes, it was a sound with a loud bass guitar. I looked at it as their signature sound, but it was no problem at all. It sounded fantastic. And that made me think about this a little, and I figured the bass guitar is probably the only instrument, at least in this rock pop context, that is no problem if it's too loud. Not necessarily a problem because it's in nobody's way, really. I mean, a loud guitar is annoying. It doesn't matter how good the guitar player is because it's in the way of the vocals and the keyboards and everything. A loud snare drum from the stage is also annoying. It doesn't matter how good the drummer is. But the bass kind of is not really in anybody's way. Of course, it shares some frequencies with the bottom end of the guitar, but it's not really in anybody's way. So just think about this. A loud bass might not be a problem from the beginning. It's all down to the quality of the player. If now shows get bigger, of course, if you don't have an amp rig on stage, nothing changes. It just gets bigger. If you do have a bass rig on stage, the only difference is, of course, that now the relevance of the sound that's being emitted by this bass rig is getting less. And what you do with your microphone channel gets more important. Which, of course, means that now you can start maybe trying out different microphones. My favorite was always the Sennheiser MD421, but others use the Elephant Deck, which is the Electro Voice RE20. Some people even use an SM57. So feel free. Now you can experiment. That's about it. If I forgot something again, write it in the comments. If you have further questions, write it in the comments. And if you have a lot of questions, then maybe consider booking a coaching call. The email address for that is in the video description. And also, if you haven't already, please leave me a like, subscribe to the channel. It helps me a lot and it's free for you. That's it for today. Bye-bye.